Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz drummer and composer, the great Matt Wilson. Neon Jazz caught up with Matt and talked to him about his newest 2016 album called Matt Wilson's Big Happy Family, Beginning of a Memory. The CD is his first since he lost his wife, Felicia, to leukemia in 2014. And Matt talked about the talented family of friends on this album that was recorded without written arrangements or rehearsals. Most notably, he talked about the love of music, the love that he shared with his wife, this album, and so many more interesting things. So please dig this interview, my friends.
So what I want to do is I want to start out here. Before I get into anything, I know that this album is about your wife. Tell me about your wife. We had interviewed before, and we didn't really get into it that much, but just talk to me about who your wife was.
We met soon, just a few weeks after that we both started at Wichita State. We actually met. We were in the same dorm, and I was doing laundry like within the first week, and she walked by and had this really friendly hello. Then I started to notice her, and we were both in same theory class. She was a violinist. She was from Tulsa. She attended Wichita State also, and I started flirting with her pretty hard in class. And then one day we were sitting out right near the practice rooms, and I don't know, I said some stuff, and I started reading from some book with all these goofy voices and stuff, and I realized, it's pretty special. So we went on our first date on October 23rd of 1982. We went to a Pizza Hut on 17th and Woodlawn in Wichita, and we were together until she died June 15th of 2014, which is coming up the 2-year anniversary next week. She was remarkable. She was an incredible musician, incredible spirit, funny, really adventurous, as far as, and very self-confident, very independent too. I mean, we have 4 children, and I'm traveled a lot over the years, and so to have, very though it wasn't always easy, she was able to she's handled, everything. And just a great sense of patience and a great sense of kindness. I mean, she was if not the most inclusive person that I've ever met, as far as being non-judgmental of folks and accepting. And even in the midst of being sick, she was very that way. She maintained that in a very dignified and very elegant way, and it was hard, it was almost 5 years, but a little, 4.5 years of really difficult times, almost 5 actually, of just ups and downs. First the diagnosis, and then, having to tell the children, and then, ups and downs with the stem cell transplant, which went great, and then, had some hurdles, and then going back to work, and that was great, and then other things we did, a trip to Florida and all that, and then all of a sudden, when it came back in her spinal fluid, it was pretty, devastating to all of us. And so, yeah, I look back, today would have been her 52nd birthday, and you look back and you get sad and you cry, but you smile and laugh a lot about all the funny things that she would say or do, or how she would handle things. And got rid of the van the other day that was and it was the boys, 2 of the boys went with me to go pick up this new car, and we sort of really said goodbye to it. Like, it was kind of emotional, not the car per se, but what it symbolized, how many times we rode in there with her, and the miles we spent, or her driving home in it, or, you know what I mean? It's like the seat or the keys, all these kinds of things that you don't think about that she handled, the wheel, that, there's one more thing of less connection, So it's a little... Absolutely. Yeah, and so but we have to move on, and things evolve and change, and can't keep it, but per se. But we did take pictures, and they're like, "Dad, you're sad about this." I'm like, "Yeah, I am," and they were too. Like, "Yeah, we were too," and she was an incredible mother. I mean, having our daughter Audrey, who's 18, and the boys are now 15. Audrey's getting ready to graduate from high school. It was a lot, and again, she just was able to put things in perspective all the time that I thought when I'd be like, "Oh, there's that." She's like, "Listen, one day she said, I don't know, we're doing this, we're not doing this. Our parents, what were our parents?" She said, "Listen, can't compare. Our parents didn't have 3 kids at once. No, not very many people have. So you can't really compare our parenting to anything else." So just, stuff like that she would just, She had a really great sense. Very smart, great musician. I mean, the actual aspect of playing the violin, she's a great violinist. But more, in addition, if not even more important, beyond the instrument, she just knew. She's one that she really knew form. She could identify all the pieces. That's one of the things I miss. We'll drive along. I'm like, wow, wonder what this piece is. I have to wait or look on the screen if it's serious or something to find out. Oh, this is Brahms, or this is which Beethoven symphony is this? And she could tell you exactly which movement. Mahler. She could say, oh, this is Mahler. 3, whatever movement. And so she had a really great sense of that. And it's funny how I see that stuff come out in the kids, my daughter's they're all good musicians, very good talented musicians. And my daughter especially just got some awards. And one of my sons was playing in church a few weeks ago and had her look like waiting to come in. He plays trumpet, but it had her look of just listening, and taking it all in and coming in. And very much like her, didn't have to sit, didn't tap her, she had a great time. She didn't tap her foot. He wasn't tapping his foot. He just has all these same mannerisms. And it was really like, wow, it took me out for a few seconds of, just his, how people are, you observe a lot from musicians by why they play, but you also observe by how they receive the music, because music is offering and receiving. It's not just what you play. It's how you take in what everybody else is doing. And I think that's equally as important. And so how she was able to take in everything, that as she played, she was able to blend and hear and, all that. So that's why she was a great conductor. That's why she's a great teacher. It all really worked hand in hand. So
absolutely. So
and she was a lover of all kinds of music. She wasn't snooty about anything. She loved Aerosmith, and she loved the Carter Family, and she loved Aretha Franklin, and she loved James Brown, and she loved Mahler, and she loved, avant-garde, she loved all kinds of jazz. And we sat one time, and I remember driving back from a hospital visit or a doctor visit, and just sort of made a list of all the great people that we saw together, Miles, Art Blakey, wow. Elvin Jones numerous times. Elvin flirted with her. I have a great photo with her with Art Blakey. They both got their degrees from NEC. He got an honorary doctorate that day. Johnny Griffin, the list goes on and on. Phil Woods, all these great, Dizzy, Ella Fitzgerald, Stan Getz, Oscar Peterson. We saw all these people together, along with, other kinds. We saw the Red Hot Chili Peppers in a small club in Boston in the late 80s, it was, it was awesome. Great. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's a great visual. Yeah, that's beautiful, sharing that experience. So with this album, you had no rehearsals, no arrangements. It's kind of a reunion for you. How much fun was it to make this album? And talk to me how you feel about it in the afterglow.
Oh, it was incredibly fun. And, I like to take a lot of chances. So, and I don't like to, there's certain things that I like to try to do with a record. Like I put thought into it, I really do. I really want it, and I'm proud of each and every one of them for that reason, I really like to, anymore too, I'm really just, especially at this juncture, at any juncture, but especially at this juncture of my life, I'm really interested in the possibilities of what the mystery is there of offering and receiving. We don't really know, right? So if you plan enough, you can welcome things. If you over-plan, then you're kind of squelching it. So you kind of want to walk the fine line. And I've done so many records, in my career. I'm very grateful for that. I'm very thankful, As a side person, I don't know how many it is now, 360 or 70, and then, all these as a leader and co-leader. I've watched people, I've learned a lot by, sometimes you have to work for some things. Sometimes you have to sort of search. Sometimes some things just happen, and you go on. We go, okay, we're done. Let's move on. And so I've learned over the years, like, okay. But I still really love, you're not getting the version, you're just getting a version. So, you just kind of set up situations and allow people to play, and I'm tickled by the results, and tickled is it's a light word, but like very moved by the results in that, you sort of sense the egoless aspect of it. You can always say it's cliche, oh, it was a special gathering, it was, et cetera. But the egoless aspect of it is what I really love. And when we did a gig last week, it was really that way too, where, wow, the music just emerged. And anymore, I like multiple instruments, so I like the multiple basses, I love that. And we had two basses last week, Chris Lightcap and Paul Sakivi. Martin was in Europe. And we do we have a gig in the fall at Dizzy's. It'll be Martin and Chris. So it's a nice combination. So it's nice to have that. But yeah, I don't want to say this, but I reread Ashley Kahn's book about Love Supreme, and then also about the making the house that Coltrane built about Impulse Records. So I was reading that one day, and I sort of saw Ascension, and I thought, oh, he just gathered these folks, or the way Ornette did with free jazz, with a double quartet. Not to say that I'm in that league, but I feel like these gathering players and letting them play, I wanted to try that with the record. I probably won't do that again for a while, but something like this was a really special thing. And I didn't really we did a record the night before, actually, which might be coming out, of just playing free, basically, with Kirk and Andrew and Martin and I, because we went out and set up the night before to get the sounds. So when the guys walked in the next day, we were pretty ready to go. A lot of times people will do that. Oh, let's play a few free pieces, and that can work. And then a lot of times it's like, but these turned out to be really special too. So that might emerge sometime soon also. Yeah, so it's a lot. It's and again, my friend, there's not a way. People, I overdubbed on this. I haven't really done that much before, because the only way to do that, the only get everybody on it, was to do some overdubbing. So, scheduling wise, and sonically, I think it maybe worked better too. But it's just ways, ways of making records. Sometimes people ask me, "What do you prefer?" I say, "Well, I don't really. I like to be in the room. Sometimes I like being in the booth. Sometimes I don't like wearing headphones. Sometimes wearing headphones is great. It's just like the music for me. The more variety and the more different flavors and different people that I'm around is really what keeps me inspired. So, I'm not preaching or saying, oh, this is the only way to make a record or whatever. This is just a way, and that's the way we did it. We move on, So.
Right, absolutely. Well, now that the album is done, and every time I always hear musicians talk about when you're together either on the stage or you're in a recording session, you're having a conversation. What is the conversation you had on this album?
I think the major conversation would be welcoming. That's the word I thought about, because we did this really quickly too, and which is pretty much what I do on all of these records. Spend a lot of with the initial tracking. It was the horns and two basses and I. So it was Terrell and Kirk and Jeff and Joel and Andrew, and then Paul Sakivi and Martin and I. So it was 8 people, and we did these 17. We did, I don't know how many pieces, 15, whatever, of the pieces in that amount of time. So, Larry sent the piece later, et cetera, et cetera. But so I wanted to keep it rolling, and I sort of feel like that too. You're sort of welcome to a period of time where, within a recording state, where the flow is there. So you just, you keep moving. I have a great relationship with each of those musicians, and they had a great relationship with Felicia. So it wasn't like anybody there didn't have a relationship with her and was just coming in to do this. They all were very close to her also, either through playing with her or being around her for years, and et cetera, et cetera. So that helped. And also just the trust. People help, we aid each other. We trust, we help each other all the time. And when somebody can say, oh, we should try this, I welcomed it, and which is what I would do if I was on a date with them. You don't overdo something like that. And then Matt Ballesteros and I have a great relationship. So, over the years of having produced all of my records and then engineered all of them, but the first 2. So, I'm very blessed in that regard too, to have that kind of relationship trust. It's funny how long term this whole affair is, So it's pretty amazing. Larry Goldings was on that very first record, my first record, As Wave Follows Wave, which was recorded April 12th of 2006. So, 20 years later, 96, excuse me, 20 years later, we're still doing music together, and some sort, we were always, we communicate all the time and everything. So that's kind of exciting, to have, I say this to Frank Kimber all the time. It's great to say, wow, we've been playing together for this long, It doesn't. I don't think about the age aspect. I think about how much of a celebration that is to say, "Wow, we've been playing together for this long." Quartet will be celebrating its 20th year in 2017. Arts and Crafts will be 17. We recorded the first record in October of 2000. Christmas Trios, 2010. So 7 years. So it's that kind of longevity I'm appreciative of, and that I keep the people in the fold, that's what's great. Everybody's still part of the family. So that's why when we got done with this, I'm like, what am I going to call this? Is it going to be just Matt Wilson and this record? But I really wanted to name another ensemble, just because I thought, well, whomever can be there will make it special. If I have most of them or a few of them, or 3 basses and piano and 1 horn, it'll be great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the combination. I've always kind of been intrigued by what people can do, or self-orchestration wise in general, and you have to sort of step up your awareness even more. So I've always been very. I love bands. Bands is really what it's about. So, this sort of just felt like that from the get-go. And it was extremely satisfying to do, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. So with all of these guys you've known for years in the room recording with you, and in light of what you've gone through in your life over the last several years, would it be safe to say that this album was cathartic?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It also maybe is sort of... maybe it's also sort of like a symbol of a next chapter, of moving on, like not moving on per se, but just moving through. Somebody said, I just read that this morning, you don't really get beyond this, you just move through it. You're always constantly moving through this kind of grief. So, and I have in a lot of ways. I was blessed to be with her for a lot of years, almost 32 years we were together. We dated for 5, and we were married almost 27 or 26 years. So that's pretty amazing, to have that amount of time of not only being together, but really to be basically really honest, like growing up together. We grew up together. It was college and moving to Boston and then moving to New York, having children and buying a house and doing this, all these things that you experience really together, traveling and going places and trying foods and cooking foods and, all the different, and the decisions that you make together, so that's why it's challenging anymore for me to like do some things where I don't have that balance, I don't have that as a parent, especially, but you just decisions, like, wow, do I buy this car? Do I lease this car? Do I, what do I do? I was like, oh, geez. So there's a lot of those, like the other day I couldn't find this title. And I'm like, I can't ask her where we might have put it. It was sent in 2009. So I looked in all these files, and I thought, sure, it was where in this one particular file, and where everything usually is, and it was the car title for the other car. So I was like, oh, man, I couldn't find it. So, stuff like that,
Yeah.
Find little things all the time, photos and written, like handwritten things or stuff written on music or et cetera, to that, or, the reminders will always be there. It just depends on how you're feeling, on how they affect you at times. They can be joyous, they can stun you, they can make you laugh, so it's a mix of emotions, to say the least.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. What do you want the audience to take away, or the listener, when they hear this album? What do you want them to get from this album?
Kind of, really what I just described, in that, life is really a mix of all of these. For us to really know what happiness is, we have to feel sorrow, and for us to feel sorrow, we know what happiness is. There's a balance of all that. I went to a Seder there's a Bible verse that says something about that recently in him. But there's this balance, of how you hear, how you experience things, and I think it's a celebration of real community and how you're not even if you're very aware of the support and love that you have from your friends and your colleagues and your community and your family, when something like this happens, you really find out. And that's one of the reasons we left the voices on and we made those little pieces, because I sort of felt like, too, I wanted people to experience some of the process of the recording. The video clip aspect of things, that doesn't really last. Who knows where that's going to end up. But, I mean, recording, like, you'll hear the voices. So you'll hear Joel, and you'll hear Jeff, and you'll hear Terrell, and you hear Kirk, and you hear Paul. You hear all these buddies saying something at different times. I mean, I don't know who they are exactly, but people will probably know at some point. And I know that right now in a listening, they might go, oh. But I think in 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, 30 years, when we hear these voices of folks on records, to me, it's very intriguing to hear someone say something on a record, Miles Davis or Mr. Coltrane or whomever it might have been, say something. So I thought those were really great to do, also to put together sort of a cinematic aspect of the record. What I've been really into about people saying about the recording is that they can listen to it a lot and they're hearing things differently every time. Again, that could be cliche, but I think when it's this active, there's a lot of stuff going on. It does sort of warrant that. Certain things aren't as busy, but certain things there's a lot of stuff going on. So I think each time people are able to experience a different perspective of it or a different view.
That was my final question. I think you nailed it. Unless you wanted to add more to that.
No, I think it's interesting how some people recently we've all experienced some loss. My good friend Dave Douglas lost his brother. He made a nice record of music dedicated to that experience. Somebody else, I can't remember. There's a few right now of folks, having dealt with grief and loss. And so, it's just another way that we can help work through it. And I didn't want it to be all somber. That wasn't her. That wasn't what. That's not what this music is to me. It's like experiencing all of it. So she loved this music that was chaotic. And what was interesting is, like the photograph that's in the inside of the cover, she played with the quartet with strings, and she was really becoming very, very comfortable in that setting. Years ago I had her play on a Jazz Composers Collective concert where we improvised together. And, she was just, it wasn't her world as per se as much, even being around it. I think this was something that she was, very, very, now very dedicated to. She was very, we did gigs with Jeff Letter, his wife Mary LaRose, and some of that music live with the string quartet and stuff, and then string quartet with strings. And she loved being up there, and I loved having her on the stage, with me. It was just like another kind of experience of having her there. That photograph is very powerful in that regard of her just looking. I know she's looking over me going like, "You're nuts," this is just crazy. But the day that photo was taken, we played the Litchfield Jazz Festival, and it was her suggestion actually. One day we were going to a hospital lab visit, one of the many hundreds that we did, and we heard Afternoon Delight on the radio. She goes, "We have to do this with this quartet with strings. We have to." So we did it, and so we have film of the rehearsal and everything, and it's pretty deep. It's like, it's so funny, and she had a really great sense of humor, and she liked the performance aspect of things, the things that we were trying and things that I was always trying. And sometimes she would just go, "Can't you just do a normal performance?" But I was like, "No, we have to try this." But yeah, she did the same thing with her high school orchestra. She did Led Zeppelin, and she did the repertoire. She was very, very into them, knowing repertoire and learning the great music of the masters of that music. But she also stretched. So we did the disco medley one night with the choir and the band and the orchestra doing stuff, and Cuban pieces, and it was was great. You know what I mean? She was really wanting to explore the options that were available, and we did the commissions, for these pieces. So I thought that was very, brave of her too, to not sort of subscribe always to the norm, but obviously give people a quality education of knowing about the music. That's it. So while it still happens with the students, of hers, having had that many students over the years, is still getting emails or messages or something from the power, the impact that she had on young lives, and not only her own children's life, but a lot of other people's over the years. So, many of which now have children of their own and stuff like that. So it's amazing how, that the legacy aspect of what she contributed in her quality time here, which is what I emphasize all the time. It was definitely quality time. She did a lot, and accomplished a lot. So, and very, like I said, with a lot of poise and a lot of humor and a lot of elegance and a lot of creativity and imagination. She embodied all that. So we were really good partners in that regard. She was a really good balance for me and a really good, sounding board, about different ideas that I had. So the next record is, something she liked this music a lot too, which is this stuff I've written to Carl Sandburg poetry. So I'm getting ready to record in early fall. So it'll come out in 2017. Looking forward to that. So that'll be a different one too, So I'm kind of pushing it as much as I can to try to just do these different projects while I can and do them, But thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.
It's a beautiful thing, and I appreciate you opening up about it. And,
no, my pleasure. And I hope to see you sometime soon,
Yeah,
great.
Sounds beautiful, man.
All right,
Thanks
my brother.
again.
All right, take care. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over this world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Matt for his music, his time, and his continued cool. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, or visit theneonjazz.blogspot.com for all things Neon Jazz. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.